Welcome to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. Today we are getting to the gritty, uncomfortable truth about your company. Is it a me machine or a we powerhouse? Let's be real. A lot of companies are stuck in the me zone and it's a slow motion disaster. Research backs this up. A recent study that I have just read says that a fifth of American employees have bailed on a job in the last 5 years because of a toxic culture. That makes a lot of money behind. We are talking about $223 billion that are being used. These are big numbers. They are symptoms of a serious illness. They tell the story of a me-oriented culture where everyone is hustling for themselves. Departments are warring factions and leaders are too busy counting their own wins to build a team. But what if we could flip the script? What if you could build a place where people actually had each other's back? The companies that have figured this out are seeing a 23% of spike in profitability and a 21% boost in productivity. So, how do you make this shift? How do you stop being a collection of individuals and start becoming a cohesive unit? That's what we are here to talk about with our guest, Kyle McDowell, author of Begin with We. And we're going to talk a lot about the book. He's going to tell us the one question that reveals everything about your company's culture and give us the raw, unfiltered steps you can take to start the revolution of we. Thank you, Kyle, for being here today.
Ivan, what an introduction, man. Thank you for having me. You said something that got my attention, a couple of words that I've never used together. Stuck in the me zone.
Yeah.
Stuck in the me zone. I like that. I like that. And it's absolutely pervasive. I've been looking forward to this conversation. So thank you for having me, my friend.
But Kyle, but the funny thing is that I was wondering, isn't it human nature to be in the me zone? Isn't it like we try to protect ourselves and this is the natural behavior that we had for years and years of evolution, that we wanted to protect ourselves, we want to take more? Isn't it a natural progression? And we are, in fact, with the we, are we like trying to fight the inevitable?
No. In a word, no. Well, let me ask you this then. I'll toss it back to you. In your circle of friends, family, the people that you care about most, the people that you have a tremendous amount of respect for, do you approach those relationships as if it's a me-oriented paradigm, like you're just trying to get as much as you can out of those relationships? No,
No,
right?
no, I wouldn't. No, for the people that I
Exactly.
know, indeed.
Exactly. And that's where so by the way, I need to be completely transparent in that the first 20 years of my 30-year corporate America career, I was really stuck in the me zone. I mean, it was all about me. And you said something else that really resonated with me is leaders are too busy counting their own wins to actually build a team. That
Mm,
was this guy. Um, and I and what I was able to do those first 20 years, I delivered a lot of great results. I was really known as a guy that could get shit done. If you checked the scorecard, you would see nearly all green, regardless of the time of year or what it is or what it was that I was doing at the time. But I did it and delivered those results at the expense of genuine connection with those around me. I
mhm,
wasn't able to form legitimate and genuine bonds that I would say transcend the workplace. But it also left me very apathetic. So I would say around year 22, 23, I had reached a point where I was so disconnected from the whole machine that is the corporate world,
mm,
which is a real gut punch, man. Because at the time I was leading about 10,000 people. And to wake
yeah,
up in the morning and have to go to a job that you loathe, and you were the one that created that environment, is a real punch in the gut. It's an absolute punch in the gut. It's like, what am I doing? Why am I spending so many hours in this identity that is not authentically me?
mm,
Which was a real hard pill to swallow. But I think what happens with all of us is we get in this lather, rinse, repeat treadmill type environment where we don't take time to have that moment of reflection or many moments of reflection to say, why am I here? Not just here in this job, but why am I here? And I think there's a strong argument, and the Stoics would tell us that we have an obligation to take care of one another. We have an obligation to approach every single interaction relationship as if it was a we oriented relationship. But what happens is you talked about the inevitable and you talked about is it innate in us that we just approach our work lives with this me focus? The answer, I don't think it's inevitable, but it is reality.
Mm,
So where I try to, in my work today, and part of the purpose of writing the book was getting people to realize and learn perhaps from 20 years of mistakes, because the last 10 years of my career, the fulfillment, the passion, the connection with those that I worked with every single day that have now transcended work relationships into more personal connections. If we approach our work as a job, that's what we'll have as a job. But if we approach our work, especially if you're in a position of authority or if you're a quote unquote leader,
mm,
the opportunity to forge real connections, have a tremendous impact greater than your title, and create this legacy, what I call a leadership legacy, I think it's an obligation. It's not about X's and O's, because if you approach our relationships at work and our connections with those around us, and you connect those dots to something bigger than just the job, the fulfillment that comes dwarfs anything that you could ever imagine had you not taken that moment to say, why am I here? What am I doing? How do I want to be remembered? Um, so I think if we approach the relationships inside the workplace similarly to as how we approach them outside of the workplace, and they're not going to be exactly the same, I get it. But if we go into it with that mindset that I'm here to not just get the laundry out and deliver a product or service, I'm actually here to help others,
mm.
help those we serve externally and help those that I lead. And I'll tell you, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, in a bit, when you establish your leadership principles, the things by which I want people to judge me, the things that we hold each other accountable to and for, that will change how you view what you do every day. The results will come, but more profound, what I witnessed as I made this massive pivot after I had this epiphany, is you watch bosses transform into leaders, people that actually give a shit about those around them.
Mm.
And my man, there is no better feeling than to be associated with a group of people who are aligned on the same set of operating principles. In my case, it's the 10 W's, and delivering products and services in a way that actually becomes kind of fun. Believe it or not, it can be. Now, it's not easy. It's not easy. I don't want to sound naive, but it is absolutely possible. But it just takes a concentrated effort and focus to create that environment.
It resonates totally with me. Until the age of 40, I guess that I didn't care enough about people.
Yep.
I felt it like a weight that when you go back home in the night, in the evenings, you are thinking about it, but I didn't have the courage. And I was in the flow of work and the flow of the constant demands. And that makes that in order to survive, you need to continue doing what you're doing, pushing people instead of caring about the people. Making them grow was only by chance that it happened. I
Right.
don't think it was designed in purpose in my specific case. And that made me, that's why I started a little bit with the cynical approach. Now that I have going to a transition of thinking life in a different manner and paying the price of being an asshole back then.
Yeah.
Um, I think that we are a minority, but that does, and there is a big chunk of people who really cares about just themselves, and they
Mhm.
are capable of surviving, going to retirement, and not even thinking about it. Maybe when they die, they just think about a little
What
bit
a shame.
about the legacy, about that they left.
Mhm.
People who are really genuinely care. But I still feel that it is a minority of people who transitions while they are still working towards from this focus of me to towards the we. It
Yeah.
is very very small, Kyle.
I agree. I agree. And I'm not naive that the work that I do now, I see it. So I do a lot of keynotes. I traveled the country in support of my book and some other things. And it's not unusual to stand in front of a group of people and you could see it on their face. They think this guy's, I'm full of it. Um, and the truth is, and you just said it, man, I, if I was in the audience of one of my keynotes early in my career, I probably would have rolled my eyes as well. Because there is a certain amount of, I guess, wisdom that comes with, experience and repetition. But you also said a word that I think is the appropriate one, but I think the question we should ask is why? Why does it take courage to behave and lead differently? It does take courage. It absolutely does.
Oh yeah.
So, so I'll answer my own question because I feel like we're products of our environment. So the way that I led the first 20 years of my career was absolutely a reflection of what I observed.
Mm,
So, I turned 50 2 months ago, and I was raised in a time where it was normal for the boss to bang their fist on the desk. It was normal to raise your voice. It was normal to be an asshole.
mm,
Doesn't make it right, but it was normal. So for me, and there's this cycle that happens. I'm sure every listener or viewer of your podcast, and I'm sure you can relate to this. So let's just pretend you and I are on a team together. We're peers,
mm,
and our boss is someone that you and I don't really care a lot for. We kind of loathe this fella.
mm,
Let's just pretend, because that's not dissimilar than what from what a lot of people experience every day. They just don't connect with their boss because
mm,
that person is a boss, not a real leader. Well, our boss is so good at playing the internal games that he's been promoted. And now you and I are thinking, man, I think I'm capable of taking that role. I want to backfill. I want his job. He's opened it up, and now he's responsible for making the selection, choosing who's going to be his backfill. So naturally, this is the inherent part where I think you're onto something. We inherently behave in a way that will endear ourselves to that person making the decision.
yeah,
So if we approach our leadership in a drastically different way than this person has, the one that we've observed, the one that we've loathed for however long now, if we behave drastically different, we're not going to get that job. We're
mm,
not, because we want to show that we want to endear ourselves to that our former boss who has now been promoted. We want to show that we can do the same thing that he or she has done in the same way, and instill some confidence in them that we know what the hell we're doing. So if we behave differently than what he or she is, the way that he's behaved historically, it's going to be like, wait, no, that's not what we need here. So what happens is this cycle continues. So my bad behavior and mirroring what I've observed in this leader, this boss, more appropriately, I will mimic that behavior over and over because we reward that. We're going to get promoted for that because we're kind of continuing this dysfunction. The cycle continues. So until someone has the courage to say, hey, man, there's a better way. And it's a question I used to ask a lot. Is there a better way? Until someone actually says, I think there is a better way, and I'm going to chase that better way, this cycle is going to continue. Now, I will tell you this in my work, I've noticed, especially over the last, probably mostly since COVID, the workplace has changed so dramatically that no longer can the company, the boss say, here are the rules, get on board or get out. There are too many options. The workforce has way too many options with work at home being what it is, and you can work in different countries, different hemispheres, and still have, make a pretty good living. So that's changing. No longer can we say, here are the rules, play by them. I think the employee base, the workforce, has a much louder voice in what that work experience should be like. And it's incumbent on leaders to recognize this shift and lead differently, lead in a better way.
mm. That is true. But and you have highlighted it a couple of times already that there is a price to pay if you are not in line with the culture at that
Hmm.
specific moment. You are
Hmm.
going to be judged differently. You are going to be separated from the crowd. But when we look at people who have got awesome lives in the world, these heroes that we have heard, when they did these things, they had to pay a price. They were also put aside. I still remember this beautiful story that there is of a guard in Switzerland between Austria and Switzerland during the Second World War who let 600 Jews enter into Switzerland. He was put in prison for 5 years. He was considered guilty until 15 years ago in Switzerland, despite the fact that he did
Wow.
something amazing. But you see, the
Yeah,
thing is that there is always a price to go against the wind. Now, but there is also a reward when we are capable of
that's right.
going towards the flow, changing something, not being ashamed of who you are in the evening or when you are caressing the head of your kid. That is a feeling of where you feel unique, where you feel yourself, where you feel really human.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, man. I couldn't agree more. The fact is, and this was part of my epiphany was if I want to feel the way that I felt the first 20 years, I had the recipe. I knew exactly how to get there. I was that command and control boss, results at all costs. You got a sick child, don't really care.
Yeah.
We've got work to do on Saturday. Be here Saturday. I probably won't be here, but you should be here. That kind of nonsense. And it's uncomfortable, and there is a price to pay. And that's a question I get a lot from either readers or folks after a keynote is, how do I make this shift? Because my boss is not going to be on board with this.
Mm.
I'm in an environment where, Kyle, I love the message, but I just don't think it's going to be embraced in my organization. That puts us at a fork in the road because you're not going to change your boss. At least in my experience, they may put on a facade or some type of mask that says, "Yeah, I'm on board. This weed stuff is really for us. Let's go." But the first time they're challenged or their foothold on the organization is threatened, it becomes a very me-oriented reaction. So that fork in the road represents, the opportunity to change our boss, which ain't happening, or lead in a way that inspires those around you to become so powerfully connected that the boss has no choice. You create momentum that says, "Man, what the heck is Ivan doing over there? His employee engagement skills are through the roof. His turnover's down. His results are up. When we talk to his team, they love working with him." By the way, it doesn't mean they love him. It means they love working with him. Why? Because they trust him. He's authentic. He's relatable. He cares about them. He understands what's happening outside of work because he recognizes that we have to support the whole human, not just what they're doing between the hours of 9 and 5. So that's a fork in the road. And I guess there's even a third option and this is where I've seen folks really struggle with making the decision. And that decision, by the way, is, do I get out? Do I leave this organization in hopes of finding a place that I'm allowed to be my authentic me? And dude, I'm not naive. That is a very difficult decision to make. We have obligations, we've got bills, we've got families to support, and stepping away from that is a bit of a risk. But I will tell you, man, at least from my own experience, when you make the decision to hunt for a better way, whatever that is for you, for me, it's principle-based leadership and it's the 10 W's. But whatever that is for you, whatever that different, better way is for you, you may have to take 1 or 2 steps backward to take 3, 4, 5 steps forward. And those steps backwards can be awkward and painful. I never would have written my book if I didn't come to this epiphany that there was a better way. Different doors and opportunities will open. As cliche and kind of corny as that sounds, that struggle to find the right place for you is absolutely worth the calories spent.
Hmm. Kyle, do you have like a personal hero who has been successful at doing this shift of culture from the me to the we? Do you have somebody in mind that either that we all know or that nobody knows, but you have met?
There's a guy that I hold as kind of the standard. I would say he's on the Mount Rushmore of we oriented type leaders. His name is Harry Kramer. He is a former CEO of a multi-billion-dollar firm called Baxter International. He
Mm.
has now he left that work many years ago. Now he's a leadership professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern. And I happened to cross paths with him when I was in business school. And he was one of maybe 3 leaders my entire life that really inspired me and instilled in me this notion that you can deliver fantastic results, but not at the expense of those around you. And not with, and for me to win doesn't necessarily mean, in fact, it rarely means someone else has to lose. So Harry wrote a book called From Values to Action.
Mm.
And in that book, he talks about these 4 values for him that will make you what he has coined a values-based leader. And it's funny, one of those 4 values is self-reflection. We touched on that a moment ago. And it's having those hard conversations. I call it the mirror of truth. It's when you have a colleague or someone that you can confide in, could be a loved one, it could be no one at all. It's a metaphor to say, I'm going to ask myself the questions that maybe my boss isn't asking. That am I a leader that I would be proud to see my behavior replicated within my team? Did I make good on my promises yesterday? Am I handling myself in a way that if there were a documentary crew or a camera in every corner of every room in which I have interactions, is that a horror flick or is that an inspirational movie that others would take some value from? those types of questions and having that self-reflection is just critical in our growth as humans, but certainly as leaders. So I would say for those not familiar with him, Harry Kramer is someone that if he doesn't inspire you, you got to check your pulse because he's the real deal. It's funny, man. I'm sure you've seen in your life, whether it be a celebrity, an athlete, or whatever their field is, and you've met one of those people and you're kind of disappointed because the real person is not what we've grown to know. That's not Harry Kramer. He's about as authentic as they get, and he's a source of inspiration for me for over a decade now.
I like
Check him
this.
out.
I will.
He's awesome.
Self-reflection. Ha. You know that I did a little research about how many companies are into promoting self-awareness trainings, self-reflection approaches, mental models, and there is not so many. It's like
No.
nobody cares about
Yeah.
that, which I find it completely horrible because a lot of the things that we need in order to be successful at the shift, at the cultural shift, are starting by the individual knowing themselves. It's not by the slides that they're going to see or the book that they're going to
That's right.
read. You cannot replicate it. You have to embed yourself, get soaked with content, but it has to be with your flavor. So, have what? How can we start this moment? Is it a training that people needs in order to help them create these mental processes for self-reflection or self-awareness? How should we tackle this problem, Kyle?
I think like anything else in life, it requires purpose. It requires commitment. So I like to say installing my leadership principles, the 10 W's in your life and into your organization is incredibly simple. It is incredibly simple, but simple does not mean easy.
Mm,
For example, we know the recipe to lose weight. You got to take in fewer calories and burn more calories. Maybe get some strength training in. Like we know what's required to do a lot of things in this life. They're simple, but it's not easy to push away from the table. It's not easy to get up early and work out. Those things are difficult.
mm,
So we often are confronted with opportunities to improve ourselves, to grow, to develop, but it takes an overt commitment to that change. And then it takes recognizing it's not going to be easy. We've got to recognize growth comes from adversity more
mm,
often than not. Self-development comes from recognizing what I'm not good at, where I'd like to be, and what needs to happen between here and there. But none of this happens without first making a choice. You've got to make a choice. Now, as I said a moment ago, it's not unusual for someone to hear, kind of what I do. It's not unusual for someone to hear that and say, yeah, but, or he doesn't get it. My company's different. And all of those things are true. When I had my epiphany, people looked at me like I was crazy. I had peers tell me, you were the most corniest leader I've ever been around. They called me corny because I led in a different way. I used to take offense to that. Now I wear it like a badge of honor. Um, it's so let's use that crude analogy of losing weight. You wake up one morning and you say, man, I'm not happy with how I look or how I feel, or both. And you make this decision. I'm committed. I'm going to lose some weight. I go to the gym that day. Come home. I might be a little sore, but I don't look any thinner. I haven't lost any weight.
mm,
All right, let's go back the next day. Do it all over again. Same thing. I come home that day, maybe a little sore, haven't lost any weight. Day 3, day 4, day 5. This repetition that I've got to build, it's a choice that I'm making every single day.
mm,
We often wake up and say, I'm going to do this today, or I'm going to do that today. And it's fleeting. And it
mm,
happens one day and we don't continue. So once that choice is made, I say we have to make that choice every day, but every interaction of every day, because it's easy to backslide and say, I'm going to be that boss I've always been, bang my fist on the desk. When you make the choice, it's something that has to be front of mind over and over and over again. That's not to say I'm perfect at it or anybody's perfect at it, because there will be days where you're just like, I don't have it today. I don't have the energy. I don't have that mindset that I've been espousing for so long now. But they can't be more often than not. So I've got to make that choice every single day, give myself grace when I'm not as connected or plugged in as I'd like to be, and know that tomorrow's another day. I'm going to make that choice again. And the same is with this weight loss journey. It's like, yeah, there'll be days where I probably slid and ate a bunch of cookies one night before bed. but
Hmm.
I know the next day is an opportunity to get back on that horse and continue to down this path where I want to take. But if we don't consistently make that choice in spite of and in the face of adversity, the naysayers, it's harder, it requires more time, but the outcome is almost always worth that energy spent. So the very kind of abbreviated answer to your question is make the choice, recognize where you are and where you'd like to go, and what is required to get from here to there. And for some, it could be reading a book. For others, it could be attending a seminar. For others, it could be just having that focused time to say, I'm not the person I want to be, the leader I want to be, and I think I have a better impact to give. But how do I get there? It's like anything else. We got to be students of leadership. We have to be students of anything that we want to be better at. It involves dedicating the time, becoming a student of that thing, and being relentless about the pursuit of it.
Hmm. I love this way that you describe it. It makes me think about the habit formation. It's
Mhm.
consistency, constant repetition, and it doesn't have to be like I'm going to dedicate 2 hours today. No, it can
That's
be
right.
I'm going to dedicate every day 5 or 10 minutes for myself to get to know myself better. I'm going to write it alone, and that's what makes a better person. This consistent way is not important about how intense it can be the effort because that afraid a lot of people to start this big change, right?
Keep stacking them, keep stacking them. And so for me, when I introduced the principles back in 2017, um, the reaction that I got was not dissimilar from the keynote reaction I mentioned a moment ago. So there are about 40, 50 people in the room. I would think half the room was pretty optimistic and excited. So I just joined an organization and it was so let me just provide a little bit of context. So the night before, I took this role where this was back 2017, where was asked to lead about 15,000 employees. It was a $7 billion program. And this was my chance to lead differently. It was my chance to actually pursue a better way because I just left a big corporate role that I was just so disconnected from that I knew when I was going to go back into a different organization that I was going to lead in a different way. But I didn't know how. I didn't know what that meant. I was just committed to something different, trying to find a better way. And the night before I was going to meet with these top 40 or 50 leaders, I was about 60 days into my role, and it was my chance to kind of send a message. Here's how I would like us to be received. Here's how I would like us to treat one another. Here's what you can expect from me. And also, here's what I would like to expect from you. And these principles were what I introduced next, the 10 We's. Half of the room was pretty optimistic and excited. There was a quarter of the group that I would say is, we'll see, trust but validate. And then there was a segment of the group, probably about a quarter as well, that was just like, this guy's full of it. And it wasn't about me. They didn't think I was full of it. They had seen people come and go in that role that were full of it. They had been burned from previous bosses throughout their career to think that this guy is going to create some new thing and we have to get on board. But the last guy had his own thing and he's gone now. So why am I going to invest a lot of time and energy into this? But what happens though is if I can get that 50% to rally with me and they start to benefit not just in their work output, but in their connections with those around them. Work becomes a little bit easier, actually. This momentum starts to happen, and we get other people on the bus. But the first time they see me behave in a way contrary to the principles that I'm espousing, it's dead on arrival, man. It's dead on arrival. So that goes back to the choice. So when I make this choice to say, here's who we are, here's how we're going to treat each other, here's the behavior standards by which we're going to hold each other, to which we're going to hold each other accountable. It's now on me to live that every single day. And when I don't, it's on me to say, I blew it, man. I'm sorry. I didn't behave in a way that I'm proud of. But I know that you guys are still here to pick me up. And I know that if the shoe were on the other foot, I would do the same for you. Man, what an environment that starts to become.
Very inspiring. And I was wondering, so, and this happens very often in corporations when you are dealing with a top performer, but this top performer is a lone wolf, a
Yeah,
classic
toxic.
employee.
Yeah.
How do you get them to buy into the we vision? Imagine that you have already hired him, so you don't have the choice to say, okay, now go back. No, can you really make him buy into this we vision?
Um, it's not a yes or no answer. It really is dependent on the person because they've got to make that choice like the rest of us have made. our leadership impact is not only judged by the things that we do and the things that we drive, it's also judged by what we accept. And it's a cliche, but it's true. One bad apple does indeed spoil the bunch. So if I'm leading a team of 10 or 10,000 and there is a known performer who is toxic, who is me oriented, who is results at all costs, and if I allow that to happen, I'm sending the message to the rest of the group, whether it's the other nine or the other 9,999, that I'm okay with this because results matter more than how we behave and how we treat each other. So I've been in that awkward situation where I've had to approach a very high performer to say, man, I really appreciate what you're delivering for us. You're adding a ton of value, and we are so grateful for that. But you're not doing it in a way that is bringing other people along. Your focus on you and your own accolades is actually alienating those around you. So if we're going to be a team, we can't just have one member who's performing in a way that is kind of unique and quote unquote better than others because we're losing as a team. And we're going to judge our success by our team, not by any one individual. And when you lead, especially large organizations, there's this tendency for these silo perspectives. So in the scenario that I was describing earlier with these 15,000 employees, as you can imagine, there are a variety of different pillars inside of this large organization, and the leaders of each of these pillars would view our collective success through the lens of just their team. So we could have an operations unit on one floor who is really underperforming. All of their metrics are in the trash can. But down the hall, there's our marketing group is just really crushing it. They've got, they've delivered great products and services. They're driving increased revenue. They're driving exactly what we need them to do. They're winning. But as a team, as an organization, as a unit, we can't have pockets of functional areas that are underperforming and even failing and think that we're winning as a whole. So if I've got a leader who's leading a group that's crushing it and a leader that's really struggling, what's happening that I can share the negative and the positive, and that we come together to be better overall. It's at the individual unit. We can't have bad performers tainting the rest of the group, and it's as you go up the organization. We can't have functional divisions that are behaving and operating differently at the expense of someone else. Ultimately, this conversation ends in you have the conversation early on to say, listen, we really need you to kind of work on your team paradigm, right? It's not about you, it's about us. Mm-hmm. And you have very open conversations and say, here's where we've got to get to this point, man, where people aren't looking at you as this asshole that, for you to win, they've got to lose. Those conversations, hopefully over a finite period of time, become more reasonable and they're less awkward. And it's more about connecting with those around you instead of my own results. But ultimately, we've got to make a decision. If that behavior doesn't change, are you doing more harm than good? And I don't mean just by their results. I mean, are they doing more harm than good to our culture? Are they helping further our agenda of becoming this culture of excellence, a term that I use a lot? We're not trying to be perfect, but we are trying to deliver excellence. And if you're not contributing to that, I'll help you find another job. I really will. And I don't mean that I'm just going to kick you out and you go find somewhere else. I'll serve as a reference. I will help you find something within our organization, but it can't be on this team because we're much more focused on the collective than we are any one person.
Kyle, that's one of the reasons why I launched this podcast is because I'm always expecting radical ideas. And what you say is radical, benevolent, kind, and good for cultures. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
There is, in your book, there is this theme of accountability. In a we-oriented culture, how do you handle underperformance without shaming the individual? In general, how do you handle underperformance? We are in a we culture, remember. So it's not only dependent on the specific outcomes from an individual, but it's based on the team. How would you recommend that we handle that?
Well, it starts well before the team member is underperforming. And I think that's where a lot of bosses, not leaders, they get it wrong is, hey, welcome to the team. Here's how you do your job. Here are the X's and O's and the metrics to which we're going to hold you accountable. Those metrics aren't delivered. Things aren't going well. We go have that difficult conversation. Get your results up or else. And we may be a little nicer than that. Um, the problem is when we are approaching their performance, we're approaching them about their performance after we're seeing less than desirable results, we've already missed the boat. It starts way upstream with expectations. Here are the expectations of what we're going to hold you accountable to these measurements, these metrics. Here's how we get there, and that's these principles, right? This is how we treat each other. We do the right thing. We lead by example. We say what we're going to do, and then we do it. We take action. We own our mistakes, all the way through number 10. So I've set this under, and the last part of that conversation early on in this interaction is, what do you need from me? What do you need from me? So we've established this criteria. We're going to co-author your goals. So there's black and white measurements that just come with the role. Like, if you're a salesperson, it's this quota. You pick it. There's always measurements that are connected to a role. We're going to establish those expectations, and that conversation is not just going to be about, here's what you have to do. It's, what do you need from me? How do I remove the roadblocks, the barriers, the things that stand in the way of your excellence? It's a two-way street. I can't just expect you to deliver results without the role. I'm here not just to check boxes and tell you what to do. I'm actually here to help you deliver on those things. So the tough conversations actually become a lot less tougher, because if I've done my job and we've co-authored these expectations and you're aware of what it is, your success criteria, for lack of a better term, when those results aren't where we need them to be, it's like, hey, Ivan, when we first set these expectations, you were on board and you agreed that these were achievable expectations, and we agreed on the things that you needed from me to deliver on these expectations. You're not hitting it, man. You're not there now. Now, one of the principles is we pick each other up. Another one is we challenge each other. So I'm going to sit down with you, and I am literally going to say to you, listen, the results aren't where we need them to be, but we challenge each other, right? And you're on this team because we know you add value. We know that you're capable of delivering excellence. But what's happened? What has stood in the way from you, the conversation that we originally had, where we were aligned with these objectives and these measurements. You're not delivering them today. The first question is not what the hell's going on. The first question is, why? Why? Because I know you're capable. What's going on that's standing in the way? And then it's my job to help break those things down and get them out of the way. And then we've got to set them up for success. And then there's a short rope after that, right? So we've had this conversation, we've set those expectations, and now it's a very matter of fact, almost transactional. It's like, you said you could get here. We aligned that you could get here. You told me exactly what you needed from me to get there. I need you to meet me halfway. And if it's not happening, the conversations become a little more kind of dire in terms of if then. If we can't get there, we've got to think about some changes, because it is business and we have to remember that. But it's less about the person and more about the issue, the thing that's standing in the way. So I can come down and say, Ivan, your results are terrible. Get them up, or you're out of here. Or I can say, I need to understand what's stopping you. I need to understand what I can do to help you bridge that gap. And then you got to do the work. I can't do it for you. But it becomes it's obviously much less about the issue and about the things standing in the way, and how do we work together to get that noise out of the way. Now, I don't mean to come across naive, because throughout my career, many, many times I've had this exact scenario play out, and the results never become or get back to where we needed them to be. And that's when, as a leader, you have to make a decision, not unlike the toxic team member we talked about a moment ago. If you're on this team and you're not pulling the weight that you're expected to pull, that everybody else is pulling, we got to have a tougher conversation. And it's not going to be rainbows and unicorns, but I will tell you this with a straight face, man, as sincere as I can be. I fired a lot of people in my career, 30 years leading lots of people. You're going to be in that situation a lot. There was not one person who was surprised. There was not one person who didn't understand. Certainly they disagreed in some cases, but they always understood, and they were never surprised by the adverse action and reaction that came from their underperformance. And that's because you have those conversations multiple times, again, offering what I can do to help. So when it comes to the point where we have to separate and we have to ask you to go do something else, and those things will happen, it needs to be done in a way that it is essentially black and white. You agreed to this. We said we'd get here. We're not there yet. You've had a number of weeks or months to get there. And right now you're slowing the team down. We've got to make a change. That's how I handle it.
Kyle, when you were writing your book, Begin with We 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence, Did you were you thinking more as the reader? Should it be like a CEO that is well established, like he has been there for 20 years and wants to do something different in order to leave a positive legacy? Or you are thinking more about the guy who wants to get there and wants to do things right from the start?
Well, that's certainly easier. If someone who is on the kind of the doorstep of their leadership journey, it certainly is easier to start with that paradigm than it is to unwind years of toxic leadership traits. So that's certainly easier. But when I wrote the book, by the way, I should share it. When I wrote the book, I had this aspiration to sell like a thousand copies. I told my wife, man, if I get this book out into the ether, if I sell a thousand copies, I'll be over the moon. We just passed 40,000 copies sold last month,
Oh,
which is
amazing.
it is amazing, man. And it's not, and I say that, and it comes across a bit arrogant. It's not about me. It's about the message. It's
Hmm.
about how it's the message is resonating, and I'm seeing momentum. Last month, August, 2 months ago now, August was the highest number of sales we've ever had. So this momentum is really starting to take hold. But as I was writing the book, I didn't have any one profile in mind. I guess there was a theme of or an element of whatever profile in which that you operate, whether you're the CEO or a new employee or maybe even a new leader, and that is someone who's hungry for a better way, someone who recognizes that the old way of leading, the old command and control way, it's not going to work any longer, and if it does work, it's not going to be sustainable. So I wrote it for folks that are, well, first I wrote it almost as a cathartic means to get out, some of the negative experiences that I witnessed and even was was guilty of perpetrating throughout my career. But more importantly, the epiphany that I had and the benefit that I have gained, the connection, the fulfillment, reconnecting with that energy and passion that I first brought to the workplace that I think we all have, that ultimately is sucked out of us at one point or another, or slowly drained from us, depending on your scenario. So I wrote it in a way to say, yeah, I've experienced these things, probably not dissimilar than most readers, from most leaders. Um, there is a better way. Here's the better way that I found, and here are the results that I found, and the impact that it's having on me, not just my work life, but also my personal life. And I'll add one thing to it, Ivan, and I'm the reason I'm so adamant that you don't have to be a senior leader, CEO, to embrace these principles is some of the best feedback I've gotten from the book and from keynotes have been from educational institutions and nonprofits, and high school athletic programs, coaches, managers inside of organizations that are not leading tens of thousands of people, but recognize these principles are essentially a glue.
Hmm.
They bond us to one another, and they are the what has historically been unspoken expectations, because in most organizations, whether it's regardless of how elaborate, sexy, or difficult the role that anyone plays inside of a team, inside of an organization, I think most. Let me say it this way. My experience, when someone joins a company, they're onboarded, they're given the how-to, the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, but they're not given, here's how we are expected to behave. Here are the 10 principles that are our guideposts for how we behave. And we can point to them. We could say when someone hasn't owned a mistake, when they've hidden something, one of the principles is we own our mistakes. I can say, listen, man, you signed up, you subscribe to these principles. I'm not here beating you up because you didn't share a mistake. I'm here beating you up because you have behaved in a way contrary to what we have, to what we're saying who we are. Um, so anyway, I think when we have documented behaviors and we understand who's accountable for what and the expectations of that behavior, your title's irrelevant. But you as the boss, as the leader, you also must behave and live in those same bounds of those guardrails and those principles, or else you're a hypocrite and no one's going to follow that.
I love the fact that you have highlighted that what people should be aware is behaviors in the corporate world, because some very often corporations think we have a values that is that written in the website.
Yeah, yeah,
Values are bullshit. It's like You cannot even, you have,
Well
there is
said.
a lot of interpretation for everything. People needs to see real actions. Behaviors means actions that I can observe. And
That's
that's
right.
what people needs.
That's right. And that's it's funny you're going down that path. We're working on book number 2 now, my second book. And as we've started this process, it's become so obvious to me that mission statements are mostly nonsense. Values at most organizations are mostly nonsense. And I even when I started to kind of travel down this path as we started to work on the approach to the next book, I started asking this question, usually towards the beginning of a keynote. I'll say, hey, how many people in here who are inside of an organization that has a mission statement? And of course, everybody's hands go up. Okay, how many of you are inside of an organization that has corporate values? Hands go up or stay up. Okay, keep your hands up if you can recite your company's mission statement.
Yes,
Hands
exactly.
go down, right? And another proof point for this is, and part of our research for the new book is I've learned that the word integrity is in 60% of Fortune 500's mission statement or in their stated values. Why? Why must we put the word integ like it's a nice to have? Like it's an option? And it's not necessarily as observable as we would like. So I love that you framed it that way, saying values are bullshit, and I would just pile on with that to say so are most mission statements. Now, to be fair, mission statements actually do a really wonderful job communicating who we are, what we're about externally to those that we serve. Right? I want to know that I'm doing business with a company who values integrity. I want to know I'm doing business with a company that you pick any of the buzzwords. Those theoretically instill a sense of confidence with the consumer, the purchaser of the goods or services, but they don't do a thing to change behavior behind the curtain. They don't do a thing to get the team to behave more collaboratively, to be more we oriented.
That is true. If somebody was interested to find better ways, you have mentioned better ways, and I like this sentence, better ways,
A better way.
to have a choice. How can they reach you out, Kyle? What is the easiest way? Website, LinkedIn, email? How do we talk to you?
Yeah. Well, and thank you for that opportunity because I take it seriously, man. I don't. So I'm on essentially every social media platform in the with at Kyle McDowell Inc. My website is also Kyle McDowell Inc. You've been so gracious to mention my book a few times. It's Begin with We: 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. It's a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller. Um, and I take what when I said I take it seriously, I don't share social media handles for clout and vanity numbers. I don't give a shit about follows and likes and those things. I use them as a communication medium. So either readers or someone who's interested in this better way, I use those as platforms to share ideas, to answer questions. I get a lot of messages both through the website and through social media platforms, which which does a couple of things. One, it points out the need for principle-based leadership in the 10 W's, but it also is so rewarding to hear if people say, "Man, I read this book. These principles speak to me. We're implementing them, and we're starting to see a little bit of traction, a little bit of momentum. The principles are actually being voiced." When's the last time you heard someone express one of the core values of an organization inside of a team meeting? Doesn't happen. But you do hear someone say, "Hey, listen, man, we embrace challenge, and we're staring at an ugly quarter in front of us. What are we going to do about it?" Right? You hear them restate and replay these values. They become part of the company's nomenclature. These principles do. So anyway, that I'm grateful for the opportunity to share the message, and that's the best way to reach me is either through my website or those social media platforms.
Listen, I will put all of the links below this episode. Kyle, it has been refreshing, and I have to highlight that from time to time you were radical, which I love to have from my guest. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Kyle.
My pleasure. Thank you for. Hey, you do important work, man. I'm proud to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks.